Welcome back. Well, coming up this weekend at Westminster Mall, the Newport Harbor Orchid Society is having their Summer Exotic Plant and Orchid Festival, and everyone is invited to go. Today I have on the president of that society, Darla Miller, and it's wonderful to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
And I'm looking at your bio here, very, very extensive, and with a couple of things that really impressed me. A master gardener with the UCI Cooperative Extension. I know to become a master gardener, it takes a lot of commitment,
Yes.
doesn't it? Does it take like a full year?
It's like 50 hours of classroom, and then you
Yeah.
have to put in a lot of volunteer hours.
Yeah.
And it's a volunteer organization.
I'll get some advice from you later. But also, you have become the orchid curator for the wonderful Sherman Library and Gardens down there in Corona Del Mar.
Yeah. I've been there 4 years now, and we have about 1,200 orchids, that about 800 different varieties that we take care of. I brought some samples here to show you. We can talk about when you're ready, but it's just a beautiful place to work, and we have orchids inside and outside all over the garden.
Yeah, and I can attest to that because we were down there a while back and did a segment there, and it's a wonderful place. Well, you mentioned all the different variety of orchids. How many are there? Because I think when most people think of orchids, they all say, well, they all kind of look the same. They're all sort of pinkish, violet color. And you did bring some examples, I think, of people would think of classic orchids.
Yeah.
But there's really just amazing. In fact, I don't know what these are or called, but when you showed me these, I was like, I didn't think these were orchids at all.
Yeah, so those are Sobralias. They're wonderful orchids to have in outside, and they actually bloom all summer long. They rebloom on the same stem.
Oh, they do?
And they have a fragrance, and they can be quite large, like anywhere from 4 feet to about 8 feet tall. This one came from an 8-foot plant, so I couldn't bring in the plant to show everyone.
They kind of remind me of, I don't know, vincas or gladiolas or something like that. That's why I didn't think they were orchids.
Yeah, and what's great is it's evergreen, so it's green all year long. It's a nice backdrop for the your garden, and then when it is blooming, it's just a beautiful flower to be able to, and it has a nice fragrance. And this will definitely be sold at the Westminster Mall this weekend. We have several vendors that sell the Sobralia.
So what makes an orchid an orchid?
The orchid species is actually the male and the female parts are in one stem column.
Okay.
So that's what distinguishes it to be a
Oh,
orchid.
I see.
And there's about 25,000
Wow.
species and about 45,000 different hybrids, like total
That's
varieties.
amazing.
Yeah.
And of course, you have some of the classic colors here that most people associate
Yellow,
and
orange.
shade, but they come in everything, right?
Every color. And the Sobralia comes in about 6 different colors too. So yellow, light pinks.
So what is the optimum way to plant or keep an orchid?
Many of the orchids have different needs, different watering needs,
Okay.
different sun needs. The ones that I brought in today are pretty easy. They can be outdoor or indoor. Well, actually, the Sobralia does have to be outdoors.
It does,
like to
okay.
have a cool winter.
Now that's funny because when you say cool winter, my first thought of orchids is like, okay, Hawaii, the tropics, they want it warm and humid all the time.
Yeah, a lot of them don't need that, and we have many that like to just grow on
Interesting.
trees, and you can put them on palm trees, and they're epiphytic, so they grow, the roots become one with the tree, and they just use it for support.
How do you put it on the tree to start with? Do you wire it on or
Yeah,
something?
we wire it on with fishing wire and some moss, so it stays moist for a while, and eventually the roots just start attaching to the tree.
And you don't have to water it?
We water it about twice a week.
Okay, you kind of water the moss stays?
Yeah,
or,
the moss
'cause I think
and
it'd
the
be hard
roots.
to water if it's not.
No, you just hit it with a hose, and very simple to get some of them to grow on trees. Like the Phalaenopsis would actually be one you can just put on a tree and let
Wow.
it go. Yeah, we have a lot of varieties you can come check out.
So as far as the show goes, you have the vendors there so people can buy all kinds of orchids and all. And I would imagine, just from what you were saying, the prices range from just a few dollars on up, right?
Right. There's a variety of costs depending on, if the plant's super special. a little bit
Yeah.
more rare, you might spend a little bit. But, the cost point's really good at the show. The vendors are just great. They'll teach you how to take care of the plants, what their needs are when you buy it. The variety is so amazing. Plus, there's exotic plants as well. I brought some tillandsias in. The Spanish moss is actually a tillandsia. So we have all sorts of vendors and about 18 vendors, 19 vendors, and the master gardeners will
okay.
be there to talk.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now, I asked you some questions because I had some orchids in my house, the kind you just buy in the supermarket. But I think the longest one lasted about 4 years, and a couple of them lasted, I'd say, at least 2 years. And then they got all together. This was probably starting in January. Got all this white powdery, what I thought was mold.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where, these weren't that expensive. So I just, I got my money's worth and threw them out. And I kept the little pots that they were in. And, I'd go out and buy another one. But I asked you about the care. The way I did it was once a week, I'd soak them and then drain out the excess water. And that was that.
That's perfect, because most people do overwater their orchids, so it's great to just do it once a week, and you could either do it in water or with a diluted solution, so it's a week solution weekly. That's
Okay.
usually what we recommend. And for outdoor plants, you probably have to do a little bit more, like twice a week during the summer, once a week during the winter, unless it's raining.
But they can take, although we don't get really cold here, we certainly sometimes will occasionally go down to the 40s.
Yeah.
And they'll survive that if it's
Yeah.
just for a couple nights?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the 30s it doesn't do well, but some
Right.
of them, yeah. And the phalaenopsis actually prefer to be warm most of the times. When the winter we do take those in. So that would be the moth orchids.
Okay.
They don't like to be outside during the winter. But a lot of the cymbidiums, the sobrelias, they do really well outside. Lalias, and there are just so many different varieties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
We
amazing.
could talk all day about it.
How do you keep track? Wow.
And the other thing I want to make sure
Sure.
to mention, we are going to have a bonsai display. So
Oh.
we wanted to make sure people go by and go to the bonsai display. We'll have an orchid display that Habui has put together from our society, and so there's lots
That's
of different
really
things.
nice. Because those are generally pretty easy to take care of, and there's all kinds of varieties of that. In fact, I just bought my nephew for his birthday
Oh,
a
good.
bonsai, and
Oh,
it really neat. I remember looking at the catalog, and again, it was mind-boggling. But fortunately, they had ones that say, "Here are the ones you kind of want to start with. They're really easy." So I went with one of those, whatever one it was. But it was some little called Hawaiian tree or something like that. But that's great that you're going to have that there too.
And then I think we have some home and garden decor, some proteas. Who else? A staghorn fern. So unusual plants as well
Yeah.
as the orchids.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some
But
great vendors.
I think what's really nice is the kind of things you're talking about can, depending what you fit, or depending what you like, can fit in almost any type of environment. Here, of course, in the village, people may have small gardens or patios, and the orchids do quite well there.
They do great, and they can be in pots outside, and then when they're blooming, you can bring them inside.
Yeah.
They're beautiful, yeah.
But it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's coming up at the Westminster Mall, and that will be this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And on Friday and Saturday, it starts at 10 o'clock, and then on Sunday, it starts at 11. Of course, it's Westminster Mall, free parking, free to get in, walk around, and you'll meet people like Darla. So whatever questions you may have, that would be the time, and they can really help you out picking out an orchid. And try and give them some information. Maybe if you have your patio here, you can kind of say, well, we get morning sun or we get afternoon sun or something like that. Just if you can give them a little bit of basic information, it really helps
Oh, yeah.
out.
The vendors are wonderful with helping people.
And the vendors
care.
come from all
Oh,
over.
yeah, the vendors
far and
come from
wide, right?
San Diego, as far as Santa Barbara. And, for us to drive around to try to find the perfect orchid, it's great that they're all there in one spot. So we do the summer show with the exotic plants, and in the winter, February, we usually do a orchid show as well.
Tell me about the society just in general, because it's Newport Harbor.
So
It
Newport
just
Harbor.
start down there years ago, I guess.
Yes, it's been around for, I guess, 25 years.
Okay.
And we have about 120 members. We meet down in Costa Mesa. It's the best area to get information for orchids. I learned more there about the culture of orchids than I did getting books. And the people are friendly. There's always good food. So it's a fun place to meet up. Once a month, the third Tuesdays,
Okay.
at 7 o'clock.
And the information on the website's on the screen there. So if you'd like to join them, and maybe you'll get into growing orchids and finding out more about them. Are they hard? Do people actually grow them from seed, or is it always a grafter?
There's two ways you can propagate them: by dividing the
Okay.
orchid. So if they start growing out of their pot, they're quite easy to just split
Okay.
them in half, like cymbidiums or sobralias. Some of them you can take the seeds, or if you're into it, you can do hybridizing of the
Okay.
seeds and start them from scratch. The problem with that is it takes 5 years to get a flower, and then you have to
yes.
decide if you like the flower. So it's much better
Wow.
to do separation of the
Yeah,
the
that's a
plant
lot of
itself.
commitment there. But hey,
I'm not that patient.
if you're into that. Thank you very much for coming on
Thank
today.
you. I really
It was a
appreciate it.
pleasure. And again, coming up, Westminster Mall this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the Summer Exotic Plant and Orchid Festival. And if you want to see some of Darla's magical work, go to the Sherman Library and Gardens and check out the new area. She brought a brochure here that they just did, this beautiful orchid rock garden. It's in the same place in the
Tropical
atrium.
Conservatory.
Yeah. So if you want to see that, Newport, the Sherman Library and Gardens down there in Newport Beach, Corona Del Mar area. But check out their Summer Exotic Plant and Orchid Festival, Westminster Mall, this weekend. Good to see you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
I really appreciate it.
We'll be right back.